So this movie was bad. Now before going into this movie, I certainly didn't expect it to be good at all. Based off the trailer and everything that they were showing, it seemed like it was going to hit all the stereotypes of a negative sequel. Basically having to turn over every single rock that the original left and basically just feeling completely unnecessary to begin with. I was at the very least hoping for at least a kind of funny, so bad, terrible kind of movie, but I can't even really say that about this movie. Now before I talk about this movie any further, I just want to say a quick word on the first one. Now I actually reviewed this movie in more depth in an episode previously on my channel, so if you're interested then definitely go watch that. But the long and the short of it is that though I don't love this movie, it is a good movie in my opinion. There's some well done tension throughout certain scenes and it is worth a watch in my opinion, which is not what I can say about this movie. And I'm just going to issue a complete spoiler warning right now as though you should really care about that. I have absolutely no interest in trying to communicate my emotions throughout this movie without spoiling it. Now as I was saying, I certainly expected it to be bad, but I was certainly not expecting it to be this bad. I certainly wasn't imagining it being this incredibly boring. Now when this movie first starts off, it actually has a lot of very similar problems that the first movie had, especially within its first two scenes. There's some really clunky dialogue and exposition going on, and has some really terrible performances in it. And there's just this kind of wooden stiff acting throughout the entire movie, and it's very unconvincing throughout. In fact, the second scene to this movie is just basically a complete exposition dump. And all of the dialogue in this scene and a lot of other scenes in this movie is just so terribly written and force-fed. The way that information and history is communicated throughout this film is just so incredibly boring and lame. There's a part about halfway through this movie into the hour mark where the main girl basically comes up with a theory about why the main killer came to this location. So essentially they're all trapped in a summer camp during the winter time, and basically they're going through some old photos because their two kids' mom was also a counselor there, and they're there basically because the girl is having some visions or whatever. And while they're browsing through these old photos, they find a photo of the grabber, and it turns out he used to be a counselor at the camp too. And after discovering this information, the main girl just spouts off this theory that his spirit must have come back here after he died because he lives off the fear of his victims. We have to find the bodies of the three people that he murdered so that they can rest, so that his spirit can be gone. And everyone in this room just accepts that as fact or reality. Like there's no kind of pushback to it, there's no other theory going on. It just feels incredibly weird that they come to this conclusion incredibly quickly. Like there's no information that would suggest the idea of basically him thriving off the power of the fear of these three people that he's murdered, and certainly not them having to find their bodies and bury them or something. This movie honestly feels like a weird amalgamation of basically Friday the 13th, Nightmare on Elm Street, and The Thing. Because the killer in this movie basically attacks the main girl in her dreams. In one of these psychic vision dreams that she has, the killer reveals to her that he actually killed her mother and that her mother did not delete herself. But during this whole revelation, all I could think about is, okay, like, who cares? What does this matter? That doesn't really play into anything, it doesn't really develop anything, it's just kind of boring in all honesty. It just felt like it was trying to make it more impactful than it actually was, but it just felt so incredibly unnecessary, which is a lot of things I can say about this movie. There's some really bad jump scare cues, and a lot of the tension, the so-called tension in this movie is just so poorly done. The first movie had some effective sequences throughout it that were genuinely unnerving, but I can't say anything of the sort for this movie. The first hour of this movie is legitimately a chore to get through. It's so boring with everything that it's trying to communicate, and it just feels so stiff, and characters are making very bizarre decisions about going to this place. The main boy from the first movie is just basically there because he has nothing else to do with his character. They attempt to give him an arc that he's trying to heal from the past trauma of basically being entrapped by the killer, but it's just so poorly done and uninvesting. Anyways, I'm going to skip to the very end climax of the movie, which you probably saw bits of in the trailer of the main killer going on the ice rink with skates. And that was a pretty funny sequence throughout the whole time because he's attacking the girl in her dreams while she's asleep or something, so that the people, what they're seeing is basically this invisible man attacking her, and they can also attack him in that state. It just felt really cheesy and kind of ridiculous, and just, in all honesty, it just feels really force-fed. And that's kind of what I wanted from this movie, just a really ridiculous, over-the-top, so bad it's good kind of movie, and I think I got that at the climax of the scene. But as for the whole movie, it's just so incredibly boring. It's been about a week or two since I saw this movie, I can't really remember much more about it. Anyways, unless if you're the biggest fan of the world of the first movie, there's no real need to see this one. And this one gets a very solid 3 out of 10.